I suppose my journey with cancer really started when my mother got sick. That was before I was a Christian, and I never realized it at the time. But I think that cancer was really my friend. And I've said that before, and it didn't sound right saying it out loud. But I think what I mean by that is the fact that if it wasn't for the fact that she got sick, I don't think that I would have ever thought about God. I wouldn't have thought about eternity. I was happy just living my life the way it was. And I think my mother and I were very close. She was a young woman. She was 43 when she got cancer. And within a year, she had died. But it was during that time of her life, certainly, that God spoke into her life and saved her. And unbeknownst to me, she had really been praying for Sean and I to become Christians. And it was during that time as well, of course, that, you know, various other people were praying for us as well. We were just married a short while, and, you know, just had our own little home, and we both worked good jobs, and we hadn't really a thought or care about God or anything spiritual for that matter. And I suppose once she got sick, I started to really think about, you know, that side of life. And so in that way, I think, you know, cancer had a real impact in my life. And then once I gotten ill, so many years later, obviously it comes as a shock. I was very young. When I first got it, I was 31 years old. I had just two little girls. Amy was 6 and Eden was just 2. And with that comes the fear, of course, of dying then, even though we had been Christians for a short time. But then, you know, there's all those other emotions, you know, the fact that you have young children and that sort of thing, and you do sort of struggle through it. But for me, I would say that I really can testify to the fact that it's when bad things happen in your life as a Christian that really it draws you closer to the Lord. And, you know, His promises become very real to us then. It's not as if it's just one of those sort of things that you know in your head. You come to rely on God, and you come to trust Him, not just with your life, but the life of your loved ones as well. I was very aware of the fact that when my mom passed away, my sister was just 13 years old, and she came to live with Sean and I that the year after my mom died, until she was old enough to take care of herself. So I saw that God had done that for her, and I knew that if He had done it for my sister, had taken care of her without a mom, then He would be able to do the same for my girls if God chose to take me home at that stage. But God was gracious, and He allowed me to be, you know, healed from that cancer that I had. Once we decided to come to Ireland, I was given the all clear, and so we were quite happy to sort of come and not have to worry and think about cancer very much. And I suppose it was once we were here, and Sean had lost his job then, and I then got the news that I was sick again. And this time, I suppose what made it that much harder was the fact that I wasn't at home in my own country with my own family. My husband was without work. We didn't have medical insurance like before. And there was no telling how God was going to take care of things this time, because there's sort of like comfort in, you know, what is home to you really. And you know, Sean had medical insurance, a really good one, and I knew I would have really excellent medical care. But suddenly, all that was sort of stripped away, and we had to make a choice just before that. Would we stay in Ireland, or would we go back home to South Africa? And it wasn't even something that crossed our minds, you know, to then at that stage get up and go back, because we'd already decided, and God had affirmed that was really where He wanted us to be and to work. And so we decided that, you know, we would go and find out what was available. And God was, in His absolute loving kindness, really just provided an amazing way that I was able to sort of get my medical treatment in Ireland. You know, it was really good medical treatment. It wasn't an easy road, certainly. But God really worked. And I was quite mindful, I suppose, at the time, like you are. I suppose maybe when you're in ministry, you're quite mindful that people are watching you. And you just wonder, you know, if your suffering is something that is bringing glory to God, or if, you know, by the way that you behave through it, if that sort of is something that people can see God working in your life through it, or, you know, you're very mindful. And certainly I was at that particular stage as well, you know, thinking, I don't want to let God down in all of this. And I suppose the fears that come alongside with it, you know, when you need to trust God, and you need to take Him at His word. And He was so faithful through it all. I needed months of treatment and rehabilitation, and God provided in many ways. It was after I got better that we really joined UFM only. And part of the reason we did that was because Sean could no longer work, and to stay in Ireland we needed missionary visas. And we started looking for sort of a more permanent way of staying there, and to carry on our work there. And so God very graciously allowed us to join the UFM family at that stage. But I'm also mindful of the fact that, you know, this isn't something that we did by ourselves. There were people that had been praying for us all through the years. And, you know, we really just were carried by those prayers and people's kindness and, you know, their concern and their care. God's people really were so kind and helpful. It wasn't something that we needed to do all by ourselves. And I think God provided us with a loving church family. At the same time, I think you can identify, I suppose, if you're in that sort of situation, that God's people just are so kind, aren't they? And so we found that to be true, and it was a real comfort to us. And in the same way, I suppose, once we got the news just in February of this year that I was sick again, it was something that was completely unexpected. It was unexpected in the fact that not long before that, my oncologist, who certainly is not in the habit of saying, I think you're cured, because he always insists that there may be something that he's not seeing and he hasn't picked up. He came and he said, you know, your cancer, your blood markers are up, and we need to start checking what's going on. And of course they found something in a different place this time. I think that for me this time, if I were to be honest, I think my prayer has been that I didn't give way to fear, even more so than last time, because I find myself in a different place again, you know. And for me, I suppose the journey has been, it's had more ups and downs, perhaps because of external things that our family is going through at the moment. And sometimes it feels as if we're right in the very epicenter of a furnace. You know, it's not just one thing that has impacted our lives, there's so many. And for me, I think if I were to say what was one word that I could describe how I feel, it's uncertainty. And it's the fear of not knowing exactly, you know, how this will turn out. But I've got a husband who's able to provide a really good balance for me that way. And I think that he's always managed to say that, you know, we need to trust God, even for the things that we don't understand, certainly the things that confuse us. I have to say, though, that I still believe that we are where God wants us to be. With all my heart, I do, even though things are hard at the moment. We find ourselves in a place where we're not even sure if, you know, because of the law of the land, that we'll be able to remain in Ireland. I'm not sure if I'll be able to get any more medical treatment there. But I suppose one thing's for certain, and I have to say, God knows. And he doesn't just know, but he's been so kind, and he's been so faithful. And I suppose that is one thing to do, is to look back and see what he's brought us through through days of uncertainty. And when you're in those dark and uncertain days, sometimes it's hard to keep afloat, and your faith really kicks in, I suppose. You have to, for me, it's certainly been important to remember that in serving other people, that seems to be my way of almost, I wouldn't say coping, but it's something that's really helped me when I've struggled with things, and with me being able to look outward and not just inward, because you have a way of sort of feeling sorry for yourself, and or you can get to that place where everything just becomes so overwhelming that you feel as if, you're drowning. But yet God has been faithful through the years, and even in what seemed to be impossible situations, he's really been faithful, and he's provided medical treatment in a foreign land. He's provided for our family in amazing ways. He's taken bad situations and he's turned them out for good. And I trust God at his word. I suppose really that's the bottom line. If God says it, he will do it. And I've oftentimes thought, the fact is I could die. There's no two ways about that. This is my third bout of cancer, and at some stage it's going to be untreatable unless God decides to heal me completely. And I know he can do that because he's done it twice before. But I just do feel as if at this particular stage, I'm quite mindful that I need to rest in him. I need to trust him. And if he should decide to take me home, then he has a plan, a bigger plan for my family. And I suppose I'm at peace with that. I do feel that I'd like to serve him to the end of my days, no matter how long he gives, really. And I think there's no better place to be. I don't doubt that he's a good God, because he is, no matter what we or people may say. And I've oftentimes thought about that. And this is the part, I suppose, that worries me just a little bit, is that sometimes people may look at us as Christians and see us going through hard times and think, why would they serve a God that allows that to happen to them? And I've thought about that often. But God knows what he's doing, and I don't know what other people are thinking. But God, he knows. I never once thought when my mother was dying that God was a bad God. Even though I was just a new believer, I'd only been a Christian for 2 weeks when she died. And yet I knew that in my heart, he knew best, and he knew what he was doing, and he wasn't unkind. So really, I suppose they don't have any nuggets of actual wisdom. But what I do know to say is the fact that God can be trusted, and that he loves us, and that he knows best, and he's sovereign, and we can really put our life in his hands, and he has our best interest at heart, and he knows the big picture. And we don't see it all right now, but he does, and he knows he's working out his plan, not just in our lives, but in the lives of those around us as well. So I just want to be his servant in whatever way that means. If it means I suffer, then I'll suffer for his sake. And that's easier said than done, I suppose. It's never easy, but I'm convinced I'd rather serve him than do anything else with my life.